The purpose of this presentation is to introduce the module on global health networks and collaborations. For this module, I've asked you to read an article by Schiffman, which sets out a framework for understanding the challenges facing global health collaborations, and then another article by Laurie McDougall, which applies a slightly different framework, but with many of the same concepts, to maternal and child health. I've also asked you to spend about an hour looking at the website of a global health collaboration in which you're interested. And this might well be a collaboration involved with your case study. Not all your case studies center on collaborations, or I should say collaborations are not central to every one of your case studies, but to several of them they are. So this would be a good way to begin to apply and think about the way those collaborations have been helpful or not with regard to the issue that you're looking more closely at. So in this presentation, I'll look at 4 challenges facing global health collaborations and what they mean for operations and impact. First, let's just go over why global health collaborations are important. And some of this will be familiar from earlier modules, but the first is that global health problems are broad and complex. They require both technical and political action, which is really important for some of your case studies, which have many health implications, but are fundamentally political issues. Second, solutions are a mix of context-specific measures and those that cross national boundaries and cultures. Again, for many of the case studies you're choosing, it's not a matter of one country taking action. Solving those problems or addressing those problems requires that countries work together and that organizations work together. Thirdly, there are economies of scale in joint planning and action, and in order to get funding for issues, donors are looking for value for money, which collaborations often offer. And fourth, collaborations help reach beyond the usual suspects. They build wide and often powerful constituencies for action. And you can see in the article on maternal and child health how that sector over time reached out to engage other actors and constituencies in what was a narrow sector at the beginning, and how by doing that they were relevant to new political contexts. So the first problem is definition, or otherwise known as problem definition. And what is it? Problem definition is an inherent challenge that refers to how members understand the problem and its solutions. Problems and solutions can be conceptualized in many ways. The goal of problem definition is to achieve high levels of internal consensus on how a problem is defined. So in any given health problem, for instance, is it individual rights or social consequences that constitute the primary rationale for addressing that problem or for group action? Are there other ways the problem might be defined? And you can think about which of the networks described in the article managed to define clearly the problems they were addressing. Schiffman uses some of them as examples of this. So when you're thinking about the network that might be involved with your case study, or a network that you looked at as I asked you to look at a website for an hour, is the problem clearly defined for that health collaboration? And if it isn't, what problems might that cause? The second challenge is known as positioning. Positioning is how a network portrays an issue to external audiences. It involves adapting the message or problem to different constituencies with resources or with political influence. Again, the article on maternal child health is very specific about how the positioning of the issue shifted as we went from the Millennial Development Goals to the Sustainable Development Goals. So that's important to look at. Also, you could see, so the goal of positioning is to portray the issue in ways that attract a broad and influential group of allies and advocates, the actors needed to make progress on the issue. So Schiffman uses an example of an issue that I was involved in for a long time, HIV/AIDS, and says how it can be portrayed as a public health problem, a development issue, a humanitarian crisis, or even a threat to national security. And by positioning in different ways, you build constituencies and support to address the problems. Problem definition and positioning are linked. The external positioning that networks adopt usually mirror the internal problem definitions that they create. Neither are grounded or determined by fixed external realities. They are constructed by the actors concerned with the problem. This is extremely important. For most global health issues, there is no correct definition or wrong definition or correct or wrong positioning. There is strategic positioning and a definition that strikes the right balance with being specific enough to get the right attention and broad enough to make sure it's understood. Which of the networks described in the article benefited from strong positioning? And I think Schiffman uses some examples in that regard. It'd be important to hone in on those. If there's a global coalition engaged in your case study, how is that position the issue? And how did it arrive at that positioning? And has the positioning changed over time? The third challenge is coalition building. Coalition building refers to the recruitment of allies beyond core proponents. Many global health networks are insular and speak largely to the already converted. The goal is to reach beyond like-minded actors and extend beyond the health sector. Success requires engaging in the politics of the issue, not just its technical dimensions. In this way, positioning and coalition building are closely linked. So again, if you're dealing with an issue like HIV/AIDS, you want to get beyond epidemiologists or just people who might be HIV positive. You want to build coalitions among societal groups that care about national security, or they care about women's rights, and therefore they will become part of a coalition addressing HIV/AIDS. For some of you, for instance, are choosing the issue of measles. Measles can be a very technical, specific issue. It can also be broadened to have much more community relevance. Are there coalitions working on this issue? How are they positioning it? And what kind of coalitions are they striving to? And the fourth challenge is governance. Governance refers to the establishment of institutions to facilitate collective action. So there's three main types of governance, and they differ in the degree to which decision-making is centralized or led by one group or identity. And the goal is to develop a mode of governance that fits the characteristics of the network. For example, small networks might flourish through collective decision-making without formalized systems. Larger networks might find this chaotic and need stronger guidance and leadership. So look carefully at what Schiffman is suggesting in terms of governance, the three different levels of governance. What kind of governance is being applied to your case study? How tight is it? How loose is it? Has it shifted over time? Schiffman also looks at a number of issues on which global health network or collaborations have been formed. Alcohol harm, early childhood development, maternal mortality, neonatal mortality, pneumonia, surgically treatable diseases, tobacco control, tuberculosis. All those have had networks and collaborations formed on them, and Schiffman offers them as examples of successfully meeting some of these challenges or being less successful. Other issues on which networks exist but are not covered in the article are ending violence against children, ending childhood marriage, migrant rights, deinstitutionalization of children, air pollution, plastics in the ocean, water sanitation and hygiene, vaccination. There are several health problems on which networks have been formed. This has become a very common way of addressing complex challenges in the last several years. So the recap of the main points: global health networks face four main challenges: problem definition, positioning, coalition building, and governance. Challenges take different forms at different points in time. They will recur as challenges grow, as issues evolve, and in response to external events and developments. There are no right answers or silver bullets. Solutions must fit the scope and nature of both the collaboration and the problems they address, and they'll shift over time. Most global health problems require both technical and political action. Collaborations must include actors and entities that span several areas of work. There are ongoing needs to balance unity against diversity, discipline against flexibility, and I would add the technical fix against political action. And lastly, it's important to understand the dynamics of global health collaborations because so many global health problems are driven by them. As I said, some of your case studies will be centered on global health collaborations or global collaborations of some kind. For some, networks or collaborations have been less dominant. So be appropriate in your presentation. You don't have to find a collaboration that's relevant, but if you do, look at these four challenges and analyze the way the collaboration involved in your issue has met them as time has passed.